Good day, guys. I'm here again, Ma'am Henry, and welcome to my lessons for today. For today, we are going to talk about elements of communication and models of communication. I hope you will enjoy this presentation. Sit back and relax. Okay, so of course, to start with, there are different components or elements in communication, depending on the linguist who postulate the model or the idea. So whatever listed here in this presentation today might not be similar to what you have as elements of communication, but this one are basic elements of communication. So let's try checking them out. Okay, so let me just give you a background that some other linguists may have different number of elements. Here we have 8 and others may have 10 or 11 depending on the person or depending on the linguist who postulated that model. But basic elements are listed here on our slide. The first one is the source, of course. We have here the message, we have the channel, we have the receiver. Next is we have feedback, we have the environment, we have the context or the interference. So, what do these things mean? Okay, so let's try discussing them one by one. Now, for source, the first element is source, right? The This means that an individual who initiates communication is considered to be the source. So if you're going to initiate an idea, initiate communication, then you are considered to be the source. Then, whatever message or idea a source conveys to another person, then the information, the message that is being delivered is the second element. We have here the next element, which is channel. When we say channel, it refers to the method used. Sometimes we can use like words or verbal, or we can use actions or non-verbal. That's channel. Then we have receiver. This is another element. When we say receiver, he is the person or an individual who receives the message. Basically, he is the person who tries to interpret what is the message being delivered by the source. Okay, what's next? We have here feedback. Feedback is also a key component or an element in communication. Remember, when there is no feedback, there are two possibilities. First, the receiver may did not understand, or the receiver is not interested. So we need feedback. So there are different forms of feedback. You can either reply verbally, or you can do also nonverbal communication. That depends on the receiver. Okay, we have another element, which is the environment. When we say environment, this refers to the place where communication is taking place. This is also considered to be um, the location where the communication process is being done. Example, you are in the hallway, you are in the office, you are in the park, you are in the bedroom. Naturally, whatever environment the interlocutors or the speakers are in, it can impact or it can have an effect. Okay, next we have context. When we say context, this refers to the background of the interlocutors. Let's take, for example, I am your teacher and you are my students. Naturally, the kind of words that I will be choosing will depend on my status because I am a teacher. And then, if I speak to my students, then my students would reply. Definitely, my students will have different list of words, or the choice of words that my students would use to me will be different set of words that he or she is going to use to his friends. That is context. That means that is the relationship of the interlocutors. Now, the last one is the interference. When we say interference, it means the disturbance that disrupts communication. Sometimes it can be internal or external. When we say internal, it means that the person listening is not interested at all, or he or she is thinking of something, that's why he is unable to understand the message. Or there is external, which is basically considered to be noise. That's the basic. External interference can be considered as noise. Okay? Next, let's take a look on this illustration. On this illustration, we can see that there is a good example of communication process. You can see here on this part, this man is actually our source. He is trying to deliver a message. Okay, so the channel he is using right now is verbal communication. So his message travels to the receiver. So the receivers here are trying to interpret, decode, trying to understand what he is talking about. Naturally, these receivers are expected to have feedback. Now, if these receivers do not have feedback, either they will have thumbs up, or they will just nod, or they will smile, or they will frown if they did not understand, or um, they have a different look on their face, like they are confused, then it's a form of feedback. That's a cue then to the speaker that the people are listening to him, either positive feedback or negative feedback. So this really is a good example of some illustration. Now you're going to ask me, what will be the context? Now, the context is, let's say this speaker is a politician. He's trying to convey his ideas, his platform, the government, to these people. And these people do not believe him because they want another politician. Naturally, their feedback will be different. Okay, so that is for context. Now, for interference, as I mentioned earlier, we have here the internal and external. Then these people may have confusion, like internal interference. They do not believe him. That is personal interference. Or when other people talk to them, as they talk with each other while listening to him, then that's possible interference. I hope that you were able to learn something or apply the communication model here in this illustration, and we'll try um, applying them later on. So what's next? We have here models of communication. As I mentioned earlier, there are different linguists who would like to propose some models. Most of them are linguists. So let's try checking out what's the first one. The first one is the oldest model. This is a linear model. As you can see, the model is just a line. So it's what we call linear model. Who postulated this, or who proposed this? The first proponent of communication model is Aristotle. Way back in years back, when Aristotle was still alive. So he proposed this model. In his idea of communication, he's got four elements. So we have here the speaker, the speech, the audience, and the effect. Now, I know that every one of you already knows what speaker, speech, audience, and effect. Now, let's try looking at another model. This one is also a linear model, but the difference between Shannon-Weaver model compared to Aristotle, here there is what we call feedback. Shannon and Weaver are among of the linguists who proposed feedback as part of the models. As part of the elements of communication. So Shannon and Weaver tried to reinvent the linear model of Aristotle. Shannon and Weaver believe that as the receiver receives the message and interpret it, then there should be feedback. Feedback is very necessary, according to them, because without feedback, the sender or the source would not know if the receiver finally understood the message or not. So therefore, feedback for Shannon and Weaver is very necessary. Okay, so let's try checking out another model. Another model here is Osgood-Schramm model. This time around, this is no longer a linear communication model. As you can see, it is a cyclical type of model. What is the difference between Osgood and Schramm model to other kinds of models of communication? Osgood and Schramm understand that there are only two types of communicators or interlocutors. The first one is this. This is one speaker and another speaker. They are both speaker and receiver. As you notice, this this model gives different functions to each of the interlocutors. The interlocutors has three functions. The first interlocutor can either be a decoder, interpreter, and encoder. Same here with this interlocutor. So both of the speakers, the people involved in this model, they have these three functions. And in between them, they have the message. These message are being passed through in a cyclical form. So it starts from this person, going to this person, and of course feedback, and message again, going to another person. So it becomes a cyclical model. Okay, so I hope you understood this model. So let me just erase this one again, make this clear. Okay, let's move on to one of the newest version of communication model. This was postulated by Jakobson. Now, Jakobson defined communication with different or six function of language. According to him, there are six elements that we have. So Jakobson, instead of making this as a source, he named it as addressor. The person who is trying to address or initiates communication. And the other one is addressee, the receiver of the information. Now, in between them are these elements. Okay, what is context? I mentioned earlier that context is what is the situation, the relationship of the interlocutors. Then, of course, the message. Okay, whatever the message that you're going to deliver, it's either um, good or bad. And of course, the code. The code here refers to what kind of language are you going to use. Are you going to use Mandarin? Are you going to use Filipino? Are you going to use verbal communication? Are you going to use nonverbal communication? And of course, the contact. When we say contact, are you going to do it through face to face? Are you going to do it through letter? Are you going to do it through telephone? Okay, so that's how he describes. That's how Roman Jakobson describes the communication model. Okay, so let's try um, applying these models into communication pictures. Okay, I have here an example. On the picture, this man is possibly your supervisor, and this one is the employee. Okay, so it appears that this man is trying to fire this person. Now, my question here is, let me just erase this one. Okay, so my question here, if he is your manager and he's going to say you're fired, do you think you'll believe him? Making use of the code, the context. Okay, so do you think if he's your manager, do you think you will believe right away? Of course, I think you'll believe right away because he is the context is he's your manager, he's your boss, and he says you're fired. Okay, so the code is there. Okay, now question: if this person is your janitor in the company and he says to you that you are fired, question: would you believe him? Would you believe him right away? Of course not, right? Because based on the different models, there is always the context. Possibly, he is delivering the message, you're fired. He is delivering it angrily. But the context is he is not your boss. He's just a janitor. He does not have the authority to fire you out of the company. Therefore, there is another interpretation. So let's see that the model of communication here works, right? So you will be able to apply the different models of communication. You can choose either one among of the four models that we discussed. Another example is here. The question is, applying some of the models, especially the Ramon-Jakobson um, model, how would you tell your girlfriend that that you no longer love her? If you are this person, how would you tell your girlfriend that you no longer love her? So you can would you like to tell her face to face? Would you like to tell her through text message, or would you like to tell her through letter? So that is your your option. That means that is your contact. Then, what kind of message are you going to say? First, would you say, I don't love you anymore? Or would you say, I'm sorry, it's me, not you? Something like that, right? Or when we say context, What do you think would happen if the context is like that? Your girlfriend is very much in love with you and she is very rich, right? Would you break his heart? Her heart, I mean? Of course, you have second thoughts. Now, another question. How would you like to tell your best friend if you are looking at your best friend here and you see that another friend of yours is holding the hand of her boyfriend? How would you tell your best friend that her boyfriend is cheating? So you can use the different models of communication. So the context, the message, the code, and the contact. Now, I hope that you've learned something out of this presentation about this lesson, the communication models, the elements of communication, and you can apply this in our day-to-day conversation. So I hope, guys, you understood something, you learned something from me today, and thank you so much for watching, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you so much. Have a great day.